Hi everyone, thank you for joining today. I'm Erin Stackley and I'm NAR's Senior Policy Representative for Commercial Real Estate Issues within NAR's Advocacy Group. Today I'm going to talk to you about two new programs created by the CARES Act to help businesses impacted by COVID-19. And then we're going to talk to some realtors who have actually been able to utilize these programs to help their businesses during this time. So the CARES Act created two new SBA programs. The first is the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP loans, and the second is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL, Advanced Grant Program. Both of these are open to businesses with 500 or fewer employees, independent contractors, sole proprietors, and the self-employed. PPP loans, as you may have inferred from their title, are intended to provide funding to cover an 8-week period of payroll or income expenses during the crisis. These loans are administered directly through SBA lenders, so you would provide your application to a lender, not the SBA itself. What's exciting about these loans is that if the program's requirements are met, they are 100% forgivable at the end of that 8-week period. So I'm going to talk about how a small business with employees can get these loans and how they can achieve forgiveness. And then I'll touch on how independent contractors can qualify for them and get forgiveness. If you are a small business with employees, you are eligible to get up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs for the previous year through the PPP loan program. In order to get forgiveness for that loan, you must put 75% of it toward maintaining payroll costs and keep your employee headcount the same as it was pre-COVID-19. In addition, the remaining 25% has to go toward an eligible use. Eligible uses are maintaining payroll costs, paying your mortgage interest or rent, and utility costs. So say you can't meet those requirements. You can't put a full 75% towards payroll because you have other more pressing expenses that are eating into that, or you've had to let an employee go and you are unable at this time to rehire someone to fill that position. You may still be eligible to have some of your loan forgiven. It's just that as either of those numbers drops, the forgivable amount is phased out. For independent contractors, there's a slight difference. Independent contractors are eligible to have a loan amount of up to an 8-week portion of their 2019 net earnings forgiven through the PPP loan program. The reason that there's a slightly less proportion of their earnings from the previous year than for small businesses with employees is because the SBA is assuming that independent contractors will have lower overhead costs than employers that have employees working for them. To calculate your 8-week portion for an independent contractor, you'll need to use your Form 1099 MISC. And when you apply, you're going to have to provide your 2019 Form 1040 Schedule C. That's right, you heard me correctly, 2019. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have filed your 2019 taxes yet. That deadline has been extended, obviously, but you will have to fill out the 2019 form. They will not accept your 2018 form when you provide your application. For both of these, when you're calculating your average payroll costs or when you're calculating your net earnings for the year before, the individual pay is kept at $100,000 prorated by month or by week, depending on if you're calculating for employees or if you're calculating for yourself as an independent contractor. The max amount that a small business with employees can get through the PPP loan program is $10 million. In addition, if you are a small business and you work with independent contractors, you should not include pay to them in your calculations. Independent contractors, because they can apply for their own, are not to be included within small businesses applications. So that's a high-level overview of the PPP loan program. One of the big questions we've been getting about it, and one of the issues that's been raised rather, is that people are having trouble finding an SBA lender that will take their application. Many of them are being turned away because they don't have an existing relationship with that lender or because they don't have a business account with them even. Unfortunately, this is due to the extremely high demand that these loans have right now. Lenders were inundated with applications, and because there is lower burden of administration to supplying these loans to existing customers that they already have the paperwork and the records for. Many of them chose to only accept applications from those existing clients. Having said that, the CARES Act does give the administration the ability to temporarily appoint new lenders to support this program. So we are seeing that the number of lenders providing PPP loans is growing, and hopefully that will relieve some of this tension and open this up for more applicants. So our advice on the PPP loans is 3 P's of its own: preparation, persistence, and patience. If you work with an SBA lender already, go to them first, but be prepared to go to multiple lenders. Have all of your documentation, your application form, any payroll tax filings if you have employees, that 2019 Form 1040 Schedule C and your 1099 MISC if you are an independent contractor. Have all of those documents ready as you're working through the application process. Be persistent. Again, you may have to go to multiple lenders before you'll find one who will accept your application. Once it's accepted, check in. Don't be annoying, but check in on the process that is the loan is going through and the timeline for when you'll hear back about approval. As you get closer to whatever the day is that you should be hearing about approval, make sure that you're checking in to assure that all your documentation was correct, your application form was filled out. You just don't want to be in a situation where you get rejected because of some clerical error and you have to start over from the back of the line again. Finally, be patient, which I know is much easier said than done. But this program is brand new and banks want to make sure that they are administering it properly. So they may move more slowly as a result. We know it's tough during a time like this, especially when you need those funds to pay your employees or cover your own expenses. But once you've found a lender who will accept your application, be prepared that you may have to wait a little longer than you're used to for approval and disbursement. So now let's turn to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL, advanced grants. The EIDL loan program actually already existed within the SBA before the COVID-19 crisis. Its purpose is to provide working capital for small businesses that have been impacted economically by a disaster. And that's in comparison, obviously, to your typical disaster loan, which focuses more on physical damage due to a disaster. What the CARES Act did was add an advanced grant program to EIDL, which disperses ahead of the full loan amount. Again, these are available to small businesses with 500 or fewer employees, independent contractors, and sole proprietors, just like PPP. So that advanced grant amount is capped at $10,000. And the SBA released clarification, or rather guidance, last week that is tied to the employee numbers for these grants. Basically, a business can get $1,000 per employee, capped at $10,000 when they're applying for the advanced grant of the EIDL loan. Unlike PPP, EIDL and the advanced grants are administered directly by the SBA itself, which has created a streamlined application form on its website specifically for COVID-19 related EIDL applications. Another thing that EIDL has in comparison to PPP is that while the full EIDL loan amount is not eligible for forgiveness, the EIDL advanced grant may be eligible for forgiveness if used for one of the required uses. Those are payroll costs, mortgage or rent payments, utilities, any increases in costs due to supply chain disruptions, and finally, debts that were incurred before February 15th of this year. So the number one question that I get about PPP loans and the EIDL loans and advanced grants is whether or not someone can apply for both. And the answer is absolutely yes. You can apply for both of these loans. However, there are some caveats. If you apply for and are approved for both a PPP loan and an EIDL loan with or without an advanced grant, you need to make sure that the funds are not used for the same purposes. So keep a careful accounting of where they go. And if you get the advanced grant and it's eligible for forgiveness, and you also get the PPP loan, that is also eligible for forgiveness, you subtract the advanced grant amount from the PPP forgivable amount. Basically, the SBA doesn't want people double dipping between the two programs when it comes to the forgiveness. You can find all of this information and more on NAR's COVID-19 or coronavirus resource page, which includes a COVID-19 SBA FAQ. The website for that is www.nar.realtor/coronavirus. Again, you'll find an FAQ on the SBA programs as well as a plethora of other resources to help NAR members as they navigate this difficult time. So now that I've gone over these programs' backgrounds, I'm excited today to talk with several realtors who have had some success with them and are here to share their insights and experiences so the rest of the NAR membership can benefit from them. So first up, we have Laurie Ladow. Laurie is a realtor of more than 20 years from South Bend, where she serves clients in both Indiana and Michigan. She specializes in first-time buyers, corporate and academic relocation, and investment properties for Cressy Everett Real Estate. She also recently got a PPP loan. Laurie, thank you for taking a minute to tell us about your story.
Thank you.
To start off, can you give us a general idea of the structure of your real estate business?
So I am a true independent contractor, no LLC, S-corp, nothing, just me, myself, and I on my social security number. And get my 1099 and file my Schedule C with my taxes jointly with my husband.
Great. So there's a lot of realtors that are going to be very similarly situated to you. So your experience will be especially valuable. So you have no employees, correct?
None.
Okay. So when you applied, you were just accounting for your own earnings for the PPP loan itself?
Correct.
And was that difficult for you to calculate? Did you have to do crazy math or dig anything up from arcane documentation?
Actually, for me, it was pretty easy. I mean, I just was able to take my 1099 for last year and divide it by 12 and times 2.5. And it was a pretty simple number from that perspective as far as what the lender I ended up with, what they wanted.
Great. And speaking of your lender, did you have any difficulty finding one that would accept your application?
Yes. So my husband is a small business owner as well. So he was able to apply on April 3rd on the initial date. And so I didn't have a business account with anyone because, again, I run everything through my own personal accounts. So I have no business accounts with anyone. And so he asked the bank he banks with if they would be able to do mine as an independent contractor. They told him no because I didn't have a business account. Well, so I found this out, I think, like around the 6th or 7th. And I immediately was like, okay, now what am I going to do? So I started online checking with different banks and credit unions and trying to figure out. So I bank personally at 2 different credit unions, both of which are approved SBA lenders. One of them would not even talk to me because I didn't have business accounts with them either, even though I have had accounts with them for 30 years. Personally. The other one did talk to me, but required me to open a business account with them.
Okay. And so is that the one you ended up going with then?
Correct.
Okay. Wow. I think that is the experience that a lot of our members are having, just frustration on that front. And I'm glad to hear that you were able to find one because I know there are some members that have tried several lenders before they found anyone. So that's great news. How long did you have to wait between getting your application in and hearing back about whether or not you were approved?
So I was pretty diligent, again, because my husband had been going through the process. I was like, okay, I know this is not easy and you have to stay in touch with them. So I actually started filling out my application on April 8th, but I had it dated for the 10th. And sent it over to the lender who was going to be willing to help me starting on the 10th. They opened my business account on the 10th. They approved my application on the 14th. And then I was funded. I got my SBA number on the 14th. Sorry, I'm so confusing. I got my SBA number approval on the 14th. And then they did an internal audit, which then they approved on the 16th, and I was funded on the 17th. So it only ended up taking me a week. But but it was a daily kind of, like you mentioned in the early part, it was a daily just kind of touching my loan officer, like, hi, just checking to see if you need anything from me. Email, not pestering, but just kind of like a touch. And then when he did ask for something, I responded immediately, like within an hour. I had him what he wanted. No delays, just immediately scanned it and sent it to him.
Smart.
Yeah.
So I guess just, do you have any final words of advice or insight for other realtors that are independent contractors interested in getting access to these loans?
Like I said, I think you did a great job explaining a lot of it. It's just, being persistent, but not too over the top pushy, like a pain. I do think I got lucky by starting ahead of the game, and my husband being already going through the process. He was already asking a lot of questions, so I already had a kind of an idea of what questions I needed to ask, even though he's an S-corp, with a different kind of business, and I'm an independent contractor. I still had some understanding. So I think asking lots of questions. I think once we get to this round 2, there's gonna be a lot more information for people. So hopefully it goes much more smoothly, but be patient, have all your stuff ready that you can possibly think of that they might ask for.
Great. Lori, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We really appreciate
you
you
so
taking the time to share your experience with us.
Great, thank you.
So now we're going to be turning to Mara Neal. Mara Neal is a second-generation realtor with RE/MAX around Atlanta in Atlanta, Georgia. She's also a frequent speaker at realtor events around the country and internationally, so her face may be familiar to some of you. Mara is an expert in VA home loans and served as Atlanta's Realtor of the Year in 2015. Mara, let's start off an easy question. How is your real estate business structured?
So we are set up as an S-corp. My husband is my business partner. We're both realtors full-time, and we pay ourselves a salary. We are our only employees. So we each receive a W-2 from my LLC, and we pay ourselves each a salary. That is that's how our taxes are set up and how we were able to apply for the PPP loan.
Okay. So when you were getting all your documentation together and figuring out how much you were going to apply for and talking with lenders about what would be required, were there any complications because of being structured that way?
I actually think that it made it a little bit easier for us. I was working with my CPA. So we knew that the SBA had announced that April 3rd was the date that they would start taking applications. So I had been working with my CPA earlier that week. At that point, we had not yet filed our 2019 taxes. So I had been working with him to gather the documentation that was on the SBA website as what would be required, but with the understanding that the lender may require additional information. We had filled out the PPP loan application in advance. Of course, on Thursday night, April the 2nd, when the final interim rule was published at 11:05 p.m. or whatever time that was, there was also a new application published. So we knew that we were going to have to take what we'd filled out on the first one, transfer that over to the new one. But really, I had most of the documentation in hand because my CPA had been very responsive, and I knew that any additional documentation our lender needed, we would be able to get from him because he knew that we were going through this process and he was prepared to pull anything we needed.
That's great. So if you don't mind me asking then, what kind of lender did you end up using?
The issue that I've heard that a lot of people have had, there's been a lot of confusion, and unfortunately a lot of everyone's information is coming from social media, from Facebook groups, etc. And even in the early days, in the days leading up to that April 3rd starting date, there was conflicting information on some official sites as to whether you could only apply where you bank or where you have a business account. I know in the research that I was doing, that's what I had found. And I also had read in several places that you could only apply with one bank, which now I'm seeing a lot more discussion and even people being advised by their bank that they have a business relationship with, that we should be seeking out multiple banks with which to apply. even though early on in the process, the SBA was warning that that could be construed as fraud and make it more difficult to get funds. But apparently now they have understanding that some banks are more backed up than others. But I think that for me, in those early days, I had read only to apply where you have a business banking relationship. I had talked to several other banks. My brokers referred me to their bank. A realtor colleague referred me to his bank. And both of those bankers, while extremely helpful and as knowledgeable as they could have been, knowing that that final interim rule had not yet been published and was likely coming down the pike, they had said, even if we allow you to apply with us, priority is going to be given to those who have had a business relationship with us since from at least February 15th, because that's one way that they can guarantee that you are who you say you are and that you're legitimate and you're not attempting to defraud a fairly new loan program.
That is really interesting. And you are making my job so easy because I don't really even have to ask you any questions here. You're so thorough and so well informed. I love it. So I guess it just goes to show that depending on your business structure, depending on the lender that you end up with, you may have very different experiences or requirements working your way through this program. Finally, how long did you have to wait between putting your application in and being approved?
So I was babysitting my bank's website, and I want to give a little bit of fairness. I bank with Chase. That's who my business account is with, and I won't say that they're perfect. I don't think any bank, community bank, large national bank, credit union, I don't think any of them have handled this perfectly. I think part of the problem has been that the SBA and Congress released a program with very little buy-in and very little input from the banks, and just gave people an application date and things started rolling. And I think that the banks were really struggling. So on that morning of April 3rd, in addition to being very nerdy and reading the 31-page final interim rule, I was babysitting my bank's website, which was chase.com/cares, and refreshing constantly because it kept saying, we're not offering this at this time, please keep checking back. They finally opened up around noon, just kind of a place for you to get in line, a questionnaire to fill out, so you could essentially raise your hand virtually and say, I want to be in line for this. That was on April the 3rd. On April the 5th, around 7 p.m., which was a Sunday night, I got a phone call from a New York City number. Of course, it's 7 o'clock on a Sunday and we're in lockdown, so I ignored it. And it was a voicemail from a banker at Chase, and I immediately Googled him, made sure he was who he says he was, called him back. And as strange as it felt to be giving a loan application over the phone from my cell phone to a banker's cell phone, they're also in lockdown. So that was Sunday night, April the 5th. And what I thought was interesting was Chase was working very hard, as I know other banks were, to take those applications over the phone, because they still didn't have an online application on their website yet, because they just couldn't scramble quickly enough to do that. While some other banks were waiting to take applications until they had those portals, I was able to have mine taken over the phone because I had filled out that questionnaire. He needed very few additional documents than what my CPA had already given us. I was able to get those to him that night and DocuSign my loan application. And then on Saturday, April 11th, I got an email that we had been approved and that within 3 business days, the money would show up in my account. On Tuesday, April the 14th, the money showed up in my account, as well as that evening, I had another DocuSign for the note, and I was able to sign that. The thing that is unclear and that they can't seem to answer any questions about is how are we going to apply for the forgiveness piece? And that is the way that I'm understanding that is that's with your bank as well, not through the SBA. So that's another thing now, that anyone who gets this loan, like me, is going to have to be babysitting and waiting for that information to come out, because my guess is that they're not just going to send all of us this application for forgiveness. The onus is going to be on us to fill that paperwork out and to apply to be considered for that. And then a lot of documentation.
Yes, you raise an excellent point. And you sort of briefed it earlier when you said, typically the banks would have had a much longer time to figure out how to actually administer this program. Typically, Congress would have had a year or two to figure out how they were going to create this program, and then there would have been a year of notice and comment rulemaking with the SBA. So we are running light years ahead of what the usual timeline is, but it has resulted in guidance coming out around midnight the day before it's supposed to be implemented, and changes to the program as it's gone along. So the forgiveness piece, we are still, reaching out and trying to get more information. The best advice that NAR has at this point is that just keep very careful records of how you're spending this money. So you'll have documentation that you've used it for the correct uses, the percentages are right, if you have employees, that your head count is the same, etc. The safest way to approach this is the extremely cautious route. So Mara, thank you so much. That was absolutely invaluable, and we appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you.
And finally, to give our last talk about PPP before we turn to EIDL loans, we have Charlie Offler of Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. Charlie, say hello.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Charlie, as many of you know, serves as the 2020 president-elect of the National Association of Realtors. He has been a realtor for more than 30 years, and he is the COO of Prominent Properties Sotheby's International Realty, with 12 offices in northern and central New Jersey. So, hello from DC to you in New Jersey, Charlie.
New Jersey's wonderful.
It is the Garden State.
Well, and we've been affected by this. As you've seen the statistics, we are one of the hotbeds in the country, right next to New York City and Long Island. So it's been, it's been a challenge for all of us on the business level, and it certainly ties in with the bankers because they've had to work 7 days a week. Their drive-ins open at 7 a.m. to service everybody. So it's a different environment for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, so we are here to talk about how you seem to be successfully navigating some of the environment when it comes to the PPP loans. If you can give us a little bit of background on how your business is structured for our members.
Well, we have 15 offices. We have 86 employees between our managers, our administrative help in the office, plus our corporate back end. So we do everything through a vendor. And we were prompted by our bank, a local bank in northern New Jersey by the name of Connect One, who we've had a relationship with for now 12 or 13 years. So as soon as April 3rd hit, we knew things would be happening, needless to say, but I already had been prompted before that by the bank to just say, make sure that you're prepared because of our relationship with them. We're, I guess, one of their larger accounts based upon the volume of our business, and they were proactive. So I knew I needed my 941s and the whole verification forms from Paychex, who's our vendor, and filled in the application, used their information, and had everything ready within really 24 hours. And our bank wanted some extra information because we were doing some other things with them at the time. So they just wanted an update of that status. And we submitted the application within 24 hours.
So I have a couple of things I want to say in response to that. One, I think I need to start banking with that bank. The fact that they reached out to you is incredible. And hopefully other banks around the country are doing that for their existing business clients. Two, I'm glad you mentioned that you work with a third-party vendor to manage your payroll, because there was some question at the beginning of this program about how people that work with those vendors would be able to show payroll costs. And it actually seems to be pretty simple because they have everything and you just get it and provide it to your lender, correct?
That's exactly right. And they took the average over the 12-month period, quarter by quarter. Each quarter had a 3-page support document, and then the only thing we had to do was factor out some of the employees that wouldn't have been qualified to be counted for those numbers, and submitted all the paperwork. Within about 5 days, fortunately for us, the bank promoted through CNBC that they had already issued their first PPP payment, and it wasn't us. So that gave me access to send an email to our account rep and to the chairman of the bank and just said, are we next? Which is obviously, not knowing who their accounts are, knew that they would be very busy because they are well known locally. Within about 3 or 4 days, I had an approval and I had an SBA number, and then it was just a matter of waiting for the documents to be sent to me to sign off that it was a loan. To Maura's point, it's a loan, but if we meet the criteria, it becomes the grant. And then the money was put into our account. I don't know the exact date, but it was very efficient and very quick. And you know, after I made a deposit one day on commissions and I saw that our balance was a lot more than it was the day before, I knew the money had hit. And that was just, it was a relief knowing that we have kept all of our employees. We paid them in full in April, and we didn't make any adjustments until May.
Great. That's great. So it sounds like it was give or take around a 2-week process for you between applying and the loan actually hitting your account.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the forgiveness requirements, are you at all, has the 75% for payroll requirements, has that been any trouble for you, or you guys are able to work with that requirement?
I think we're going to be near that number. You know, it also counts in benefits and other things that you do. So the payroll plus the other factors gives you a little bit of leeway as to what your reductions can be. But, you know, my objective has been to try to keep everybody employed, hoping that this does not go a long period of time, because the team we went in with, we were pretty happy with. I want that to be the same team that we come out of this with as best we can. So we've kept everybody employed at this point. We're optimistic that we're going to be able to do some business, you know, hopefully by June 1st. You know, that's the date that I tell our company to be ready. So we're already preparing our offices for social distancing, and just, we've ordered masks, we've ordered gloves, we've done all the things behind the scenes that we need to do to be ready, so that when Governor Murphy in New Jersey and the region say, go back to work, we're able to. I don't know what that looks like, because I don't know who wants to be in an office anymore, how quickly everybody will come back. But we were able to at least put ourselves in position with the PPP, so that we could stem the tide for, you know, 3, 4, 5 months.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that info, Charlie. It sounds like you've been very smart in your approach to this, and you are taking very smart steps looking into the future, whatever that may hold.
And we were fortunate. We only went to one bank. It was the bank we have our accounts with, we have relationship with. We were prepared to go to 2 or 3 others that we've had relationships with, but they're mortgage holders on some of our property. They weren't our day-to-day banker. And as we always say in the business, relationships matter. This is perfect proof.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep, thanks.
And finally now, I am going to turn to Nathan Hughes, who is the recipient of an EIDL advance grant. Nathan, say hi so we can get you up on the screen.
Hello, Erin. Always good to see you.
Good to see you too. I love your map of Richmond behind you there, representing.
Right.
Let me introduce you real quick. Nathan has been a full-time business broker and commercial realtor since 2005. He is the principal broker of Sparity Real Estate Ventures in Richmond, Virginia. He also serves on the Board of Economic Development Authority for the City of Richmond and is the 2020 chair of NAR's Commercial Federal Policy Committee. He recently applied for and was granted an EIDL loan from the SBA. So Nathan, let's talk a bit about how you did that. And first, I'm going to start off with the question I'm asking everyone, which is, how is your business structured? Do you have any employees?
Sure. So I'm an LLC, and we have 3 employees, myself included. And yeah, I have received an EIDL, you were calling it, and I keep saying EIDL. That's a little bit easier, EIDL. An EIDL loan, but only the advanced portion so far. So, and if you don't mind, I can go ahead and jump right into that.
Yes, please.
Okay. The process was I don't have nearly as much to talk about because the process was very easy and streamlined. It certainly tried my patience a bit, just the waiting. But as far as the process, the application was just the original application. I filled out the application about 3 times. The first application was very document heavy. Had a whole lot of things. I took home some documents to sign and get my wife to sign, and then was going to scan them in the next day and send them in. And then the site was down for a few days, and then I went in to try again when it refreshed, and it was a little bit different, and I couldn't sign in with a password, so I went in and did the application, or started doing the application again. And then by the time I had to go finish it, it was down again. And the next time it was up was maybe a day later. And at that point, it was no documents, just here is the information that we want. What is your, a bunch of very simple questions. And then as far as finances, it was just how many employees do you have? What was your 2019 gross income as far as the net sales? What was your cost of goods? And would you like the advance, and what bank account do you want us to put it into? And so I answered all of that, got my loan application number from the splash screen that came up afterwards, and printed that off, and then sat on it for, I don't know, it was March 30th that I put it in, and then it was the 3rd or the 4th when I called to say if I got through to somebody at the SBA. Went through a bunch of different menus and got to somebody who said, just hold your horses. Obviously, this isn't going to happen in the 3 days. We're trying. And if you don't have it in 2 weeks from your application date, then give us a call back and let us know and elevate this. I gave it a little bit more time and got that deposit, which was supposed to be a bridge until the PPP came through. It was a nice bridge of about 2 hours before my PPP got deposited into the account. So, and in that time, it also got reduced from the 10,000 to the 3,000 because of the 3 employees.
Yeah.
Now I understand there's another portion coming, which normally comes a few days afterwards. This was just deposited on Friday for me. So again, being patient, and I think the funds ran out, so I think I got caught in that. But just waiting on that, and I understand that will come through, and I don't know how they're going to calculate that number for the loan. And some people I've talked to that have gotten it said that they have absolutely no idea where they came up with the number, but it was apparently a good number from what I've heard.
Well, that's good, and your remarks really illustrate a few things. One, the SBA is kind of scrambling right now. When you mentioned that the application page had been down for several days, I can tell you, I myself was checking on that and getting very frustrated that it wasn't available. The end result was that much more streamlined application that you ended up filling out. So hopefully that makes up for the few days of absolute irritation over not being able to fill anything out at all. In addition, you mentioned that it was a little over 2 weeks, it sounds like, between getting the application in and getting that advance dispersed. And in the original CARES Act, it required that these advances be dispersed within 3 days of an application being received. And that, frankly, quickly became obviously impossible for the SBA to meet that standard. So it has been a much longer period of time. These amounts are still dispersing ahead of the full EIDL or EIDL loan. So that is good, especially for those who maybe weren't able to apply for a PPP loan in addition. But yeah, that is taking a little bit longer, it is a bit of a point of frustration, I know, for people that have applied. And you also highlighted one of the things I was going to ask you about, which is sort of how was the communication process with the SBA? It sounds like you got the confirmation number, and then I know you called them, but did they send anything to you in the meantime, just the auto response or anything like that?
Oh, it was a very nice email that I got from them saying that that they were reducing the amounts they were giving. So I got that email, and then I got the, which, you know, I mean, it was a surprise. But no, the only other communication I got from them, and I realized just trying to call was going to be very time consuming, and I didn't know if they'd actually be able to help because they're getting drowned in calls. But I did get, right before, I'm trying to think, it was probably that morning, the morning that they dispersed, I got some hits on my credit report. And I don't know, I think that was for, it might have been for either one, but I think it was for the EIDL.
Yeah. So basically, once someone gets their confirmation number, they're probably not going to hear anything else until that money actually hits. So that's good for people to know if you've been getting antsy waiting for that money and you don't want to spend what probably will amount to hours of time on hold with the SBA call center, which may or may not be able to answer your question. You know, if you have that confirmation number, you should be in the queue. So that's good.
Right.
So Nathan, anything else, any other insights or advice you have for people applying for these loans?
Well, I mean, you know, I went through the process with the EIDL, it's pretty straightforward. Just hold, you know, put it in and get it in as soon as you can. If you haven't done it yet, go in and do it. Actually, I don't even know if you can do it right now. I think it's on hold, but as soon as they reopen the applications, get in there and do it and just wait. And then as far as the PPP, I had the same frustration with the different banks, and basically just apply with more than just one bank, because I know I applied to two, and I'm glad I did, because the first one I did, I still haven't heard back from, and that was probably 4 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that this is, again, going to be super helpful to people. You know, the EIDL being separate from PPP, there's been a lot of confusion. So it's been great to hear your experience working through the application process and, you know, some of the timeline issues with getting that loan dispersed. So I'm happy you got it. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person again soon. With that, I'm going to just do a little bit of closing cleanup. I'd like to actually take this time. I know we have been talking about a lot of different documents and requirements for this loan program. And for those of you who are trying to keep track, I'm just going to show you really quickly by sharing my screen. Here you will see NAR's coronavirus resource page. As I'm scrolling down, you can see we have quite a few resources specifically for real estate on here. And under the political advocacy tab, you'll see that we have FAQs for SBA and several other programs that realtors can access right now to help them through these times. That FAQ for the SBA program includes links to guidance from the Treasury and the SBA. It includes links to the different application pages and all sorts of information about how you too can access these and what you should do to prepare to apply for them. As I mentioned, we have an FAQ for the SBA program. We are frequently updating this as we get new information from the SBA or the administration. I think it stands at about 9 pages so far, and we are trying to keep it as short but as chock full of information as we can for you all to benefit from. Over here, you can see the Paycheck Protection Program application form. You'll see at the top there are different options for you to choose what your business type is. And then you have to fill out a lot of questions. It's about 4 pages long. So that is what that application form looks like. Your individual lender might have its own application form that might be different from this one, but the information included on that form would be the same as this. So I encourage you to fill this out ahead of time when you're looking for different places to provide it to. Let's see. Now we have over here, this is the 2019 Form 1040 Schedule C. This is the form that independent contractors are going to need to fill out when they apply for the PPP loan. Again, you don't need to have actually filed your taxes yet, but you will have to file this 2019 form, or excuse me, you will have to fill out this 2019 form in order to qualify for this loan program. And then you all already know what this looks like, but here's the Form 1099 MISC that independent contractors should also have ready. Finally, the frustration with finding an SBA lender has come up several times on this call. And so the SBA actually has a website or a page on their website where you can put in your zip code here at the top left corner and search for different SBA lenders. So I'll use my parents' old zip code here. You can see Lake Ridge, Virginia. You've got a few different options that light up on the screen, and you can obviously widen that search as well. Now, again, you may still have to go to multiple lenders to try to find one. We are hopeful that this list will continue to get longer as more of them are approved for the process. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you to all of our wonderful realtors who joined us today. Laurie, Mara, Charlie, and Nathan, we really appreciate it. Your information is going to be extremely helpful for other members. And thank you to everyone at home who joined us to learn a little bit more about these SBA programs and hopefully get some insight on how you too can apply for them and get help through them. For more information about these programs, or to find other resources that NAR is offering its members during the coronavirus pandemic, please go to nar.realtor/coronavirus. Thank you.